Segment 3, looking ahead to the Week 7 games, and we start off with a great one for this segment. Another divisional rivalry, Chargers at Chiefs. Chargers, Brian, coming off a tough loss against Dallas, a game that they could have had, didn't quite get there in the end. Chiefs, on the other hand, although we've questioned the way the offense is functioning, and interesting to see that they've added McCall Hardman back into the fold after trade with the Jets, because that wide receiver core just hasn't been getting it done. But they've won 5 on the spin since losing to the Lions. They're finding ways to get it done, and they're not playing anywhere near their best. In some ways, not too far away from where they were this time last season.
As the band is getting back together, I think Frank Clark is due to sign tomorrow as well. Having been released from the Broncos there last week. It's been strange, and McCall Hardman was always a player that I liked, and he was always on the periphery, and he leaves in free agency, quickly returns. And sometimes you go away and you quickly realize what you had, and these guys are getting back. Just in terms of this game, sums Brandon Staley for me over the course of the last few years, because if you look how well the Chargers have played against the Chiefs over the course of the last few years, they're always in the game. They beat them there a couple of years ago in Week 3. I think me and Colin were in Belfast that night at a meet-up party to watch that game, and they've always played them tough. And I think in the reverse game in SoFi, there was 3 opportunities to take field goals, and they would have been pulled away. They ended up losing in overtime. I think they lost in overtime last year. They have a knack of hanging around in these games, but I haven't watched the game on Monday. I mean, Herbert clearly doesn't look right now. Again, he's had a few days to get ready for this one. I think Williams obviously been out. Keenan Allen has become the forefront of the team, and Colin rightly called it out. He's a guy, at the back end of his career. I think Chiefs right now, Chiefs are on a good run, but a lot of it's down to how well Spagnuolo has this defense playing, because they're not really lighting up on offense, with all due respect. But in this instance, I can't get away. I'd be surprised if anybody's going to Chargers, guys, to be honest. Unless they see a big shock on with the Chiefs in this one. I think Chiefs will see this one as a big opportunity, bearing in mind that Chargers lost on Monday, to really pull away and cement this division, which, to be honest, it was always probably something that we knew was coming anyway. But to have this division potentially wrapped up as early as winning against the Chargers in October, it's a big game for them.
Yeah, same as you say, Brian. Chargers always do show up against the Chiefs, in fairness to them, but I just don't know if they're going to have what it takes to get over the line here. That Chiefs defense, as you say, we've kind of slept on them a little bit, but they have one of the best secondaries in the league. They've everybody showing up strong there. L'Jarius Sneed, obviously the main man. McDuffie's been playing really well. Chris Jones has been a monster. The pass rush has been there when they've needed. Spags is so clever at the way he uses pressure and simulated pressure, and they've been really impressive on that side of the ball. I just think the Chargers, again, without Mike Williams and with the running game not looking anything like it did last year, the times that Kellen Moore offense has really showed up. And Colin, you mentioned it in the show on Tuesday, that amazing game Herbert had where he was 40 of 45 or whatever it was. It's never been done in the history of the NFL for somebody to throw that many passes and to throw them at such a high completion rate. He is carrying an injury. There's no doubt about it, and he wasn't quite at his Justin Herbert best in that game against Dallas at the weekend. But he gives them a chance in every single game. I still see it being Kansas City. I don't know if you see it any differently.
This to me it's essentially it's steamed ham, and because the Chiefs make a mess of things, but they find a way to do it, and ultimately you think the house is on fire, then you're told it's the Northern Lights, and they seem like an odd fellow, but they steam a good ham because they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Andy Reid, and that is ultimately what matters in the end. They deliberately, they don't go out of their way to really put the foot down at this part of the season. And the fact that their defense is as good as it is this early and as young it is, I think will be very pleasing. But we've seen the Chargers get wins against the Chiefs in the early part of the season previously. So I'm not ruling it out. But I think that the Chargers have been saved from themselves by some terrible decisions by other teams. They got away with it against the Vikings. There's no way they should have won that game. I don't think the Chiefs will do that to them. I I think it could well be a close game. But I think that we are going, I think it's the end. Like, it's not if Brandon Staley gets fired, it's when Brandon Staley gets fired. I think they're circling the drain at this point, under his tutelage. And yeah, it's the Chiefs for me. If the Chargers win it, it's the sting of a dying steak.
Colin, keep rolling for your Broncos, who host the Packers this weekend. Some similarities there between the two teams, both for this game, of course, coming off a period of rest and reflection, and both have needed it for different reasons. Both of them have also made it a habit, an unfortunate habit this season, of starting games really, really slowly. This could end up being 0-0 at halftime, and then we'll see what happens in the second half, the way both of these teams have played. Is it one where the Broncos can make a home stand when Packers look a little bit deflated after their pre-bye loss? Or do you think Green Bay gets it back, and that Matt LaFleur, with time to prepare, has cooked up something special?
What a game. When the weight of the world has got you down and you want to end your life, bills to pay, a dead-end job, and problems with the wife, but don't throw in the towel, because there's a place right down the block where you can drink your misery away. Flaming Moe's. Well, Broncos fans need to find Flaming Moe's, because things are not good. Randy Gregory, they got rid of, and he ultimately, it was a disastrous free agent acquisition. Frank Clark paid $1.6 million to leave Denver. He handed back the money. He said, "Take it. I want to leave. I'm done. I don't want to be here." Jerry Jeudy, is fighting with all the former players that he can possibly find. And the QB collective continued to take shots at Sean Payton. If the Packers, this should absolutely be a get-right game for the Packers. I think they'll be kicking themselves with what happened against the Raiders. But Matt LaFleur has been very tetchy. I think there is pressure there, despite the fact that they came into the season knowing it was going to be a transition year, knowing it was going to be up and down. But he has found it to be very, very frustrating. The Packers should win this, but if the Broncos are able to drag them down to their level, then they can remain. Like, the Broncos can certainly be a Buster Douglas type who can just pull out a punch. If you are good offensively, you will score points against this Broncos defense. That's the reality of it. But if you allow the Broncos to hang around, there is no reason that Russ can't throw a moon ball to Mims and get the Broncos back into it. I'm going to say the Packers should win it at this point, but equally, I think a lot is going to depend on the injury reports as we get closer to kickoff.
Yeah, one significant player who may potentially be recovering from injury is Aaron Jones for the Packers. Brian, how do you think that might affect the outcome if he shows up?
Before I go ahead, was that a Packers pick or a Broncos pick? You kind of left it. You're kind of like hanging the door, leaving the door ajar there.
I'm waiting on the injury report, because as Connor has just said, if Aaron Jones is fit, that makes an enormous difference. The Broncos are missing a few guys, and so somebody like Justin Simmons, who's on the injury report, who a lot of trade talk around Justin Simmons, maybe that hip injury mightn't allow Justin to play this week.
There's an asterisk there, Connor. James Robinson is signed for the Packers this week, which I found a bit surprising. It's surprising in the sense that no one has given him another opportunity in the league, because he was signed with the Patriots and the Jets, and then he was signed with the Giants in the offseason, late in the offseason, and again released before the season. I don't know what's happened, because last year he was running touchdowns in from 80 yards against the Chargers or the Jags. But it's interesting that they've obviously recognised with the Aaron Jones injury over the course of the season, and they're not getting enough from A.J. Dillon. If you look at A.J. Dillon's numbers compared to last year, I know he's a bit of a bell cow type of running back, as opposed to, getting out in the perimeter and really beating the man, but they're not getting what they got out of him last year. Now, I suppose you could argue that it was kind of convenient and reflective that they had the 1-2 punch with Jones there but it hasn't been materialized. I think you said it a couple of weeks ago, Conor. You were saying if you take out the actual victories and actually look at the numbers in which the Packers have had offensively, it hasn't been that good. It really hasn't. And obviously we saw against, and it's masked by a 4-quarter comeback against the Saints and various different other players getting good days. And obviously the Bears game on week 1. I'm going to go with the Broncos in this one. I think, they have to find a way at some stage to navigate a victory at home in these games. They keep finding ways to lose. They're losing tight games at home. At some stage, you'd have to think they find a way to get over the hump and win a game. And I think the Jordan Love period, it remains a little bit iffy, and the struggles slightly continue. I'll go with the Broncos. Colin has Denver. Whip off that G, change the end to an E, and you'll have never. And say never give up on your Broncos, Colin. Broncos to win their first home game on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm going to go Green Bay in this one, but just about. And the fact that you'd be so doubtful about the Packers taking care of business against this Broncos team, I think kind of says a lot about where they are. At the start of the season, I thought they'd be a half-decent shout for a wild card. A lot of that depended, obviously, on what we saw from Jordan Love, and we hadn't seen an awful lot to make a definitive judgment before this season. And to be fair to him, we've still only seen a handful of games with him as starter. But to your point, Brian, they've only really played in spurts. They had that first game against Chicago, which, every game is a get-right game against Chicago for most teams these days, and they took advantage of what was on offer. And they had that furious comeback against the Saints where Love was sensational in the fourth quarter, albeit that he hadn't done much up to that point. He had that 3-interception game before the bye, which, there were 3 bad interceptions as well. And a lot of people then going back and questioning, Jesus, is he really the guy that we hoped he would be? He's obviously a mobile player as well, a mobile quarterback. They haven't necessarily unleashed him on the ground in the way that they might, in the way that, obviously Matt LaFleur hasn't had to do that with Rodgers, hadn't had the option. So maybe that's something they will have cooked up while they've got the time off. I think if Jones is fit, I feel a lot more confident about picking Green Bay in this one. But even as it is, I think they'll probably be enough to get out of Denver with a win. A Sunday night football, and we have a particularly tasty looking tie between the Dolphins and the Eagles column. Eagles coming off a loss. Micah Parsons has a podcast. Everybody has a flipping podcast these days, but Micah Parsons pouring some scorn on the Eagles, saying that Jalen Hurts should be getting more heat in the way that Dak Prescott gets heat, and why is it always the Cowboys who get dumped on when they lose, and the Eagles had this bad loss, and why aren't people getting on their back? Probably because they've won a Super Bowl within living memory, and they went to a Super Bowl last year, and Jalen Hurts had one of the all-time great Super Bowl performances, and was maybe slightly unfortunate, to put it mildly, that he didn't run away with both the Lombardi and the MVP. But that all aside, Colin, how do you see this one shaping out? It's 2 very exciting offenses and two very exciting defenses as well. It looks like Jalen Ramsey might even be back for this one, just to add a little bit of extra spice into the mix.
Yeah, I suppose we're Micah Parsons noting he has a podcast on a podcast is very meta, but it's been an interesting couple of weeks on his podcast, because he was very upset at George Kittle, who I thought what Kittle did was kind of exactly what we want. We want, because so much in the NFL, you are playing for the contract, right? A lot of the time, rather than the team. But Kittle actually brought it back to, the way that it used to be. Like for people who are our age and get to, look back, and for younger fans, check out especially how the NFL used to be in the late 80s and early 90s, and the Cowboys and the Giants and Washington and the 49ers. I mean, these teams absolutely tried to take each other's heads off at every given opportunity. So he's having a whinge about that one week, and then he's throwing shade at Jalen Hurts the following week. And I think you've pointed out the reasons why the Cowboys get a much more difficult time. There's also the fact their owner has 2, not 1, but 2 radio shows that he does every week. This is an interesting one, because we have seen, we've seen the Dolphins be incredibly exciting this year at times, but also against the Bills, we saw them have, a real wobble. I think though that this feels maybe a little bit like the Mr. Plow episode. And I think different people will have different opinions as to who is Homer and who is Barney in this instance. In terms of both like Howie and the Dolphins like to get shiny new things to bring them in, and they both make trades. I just think that one of the reasons the Bills were able to do what they did against the Dolphins was the linebackers and Milano. I mean, Milano was absolutely exceptional. I don't think that the Eagles have a linebacker like that. I just don't think things are right now. I think the Eagles are struggling. I think they'll be fine. I don't think they'll be last year's team, but I think they will be fine. But I think the Dolphins are the more informed team. And for that reason, I'm going to say that I think the Dolphins will get the victory in this.
Yeah, I flip-flopped on this one myself, but you've hit on something that I think is actually going to be key to this game, which is if the Eagles have a weakness on defense, it's in that linebacker core. It's across the middle, which coincidentally is where Mike McDaniel cooks up a lot of his best plays. He gets those crossers. He has that frightening pace where they send Tyreek streaking across diagonally, finding that soft spot and then just tearing up the field, getting huge numbers of yards after the catch. They don't have a Matt Milano, and that is the soft center. They do so much else right, but if there is a way to attack them, it's there. I think the Dolphins are going to throw everything at them in that sense. And the Eagles, although they've been taking care of business most weeks, they haven't been playing out of their skin. I think Shane Steichen has been a huge loss. It's not quite working on offense. They brought in Julio Jones. I don't know how much that's going to do for you, but it would slightly concern me that they feel the need to even do that. We've seen AJ Brown, light it up from time to time, but Devonta Smith hasn't been at the same level that he was. Bringing in Swift hasn't necessarily clicked in the way that you thought it might do. Jalen Hurts has carried the team at times, and he's looked sensational both with ball in hand and when he's had to take off and run. But I see this one going Miami's way. I have to say, I think it's a tough place to go and win, but I think they're in the right position. They got the right momentum, and I can see them getting it done in this game. Brian, how does it go for you?
It's dangerous when we're all on the same team, isn't it? But I didn't think, you said earlier on, Conor, I didn't think this would go in the direction it did in terms of the Ravens-Lions game. I'm the same. I'm with the Dolphins, and it makes me nervous to pick them against an Eagles team that will obviously want to get back on track after last week. But I just think, as good as the Dolphins have been, and don't get me wrong, they've been fantastic and they've been a joy to watch, they haven't put that marker down in terms of really going and beating a team. Now, you could argue if they do win this game, people say, well, it's not the Eagles of old, it's not the Eagles of last year in terms of how they're playing both offensively and defensively. But I just feel like they need to get that kind of win. They need to beat a team who people have expectations to be in the Super Bowl. So if they come up short against the Bills, well, when I say the Bills coming short, they were well beaten in that game. And I just think this one is one they really need to have. In my opinion, the Eagles can survive a loss here and still find themselves in the number one seed come the end of the season. And you've mentioned so many different concerns there. There's a bit of a doubt right now over how well the secondary are playing for the Eagles. We saw what the Commanders were able to do in their last home game. They went up and down the field on them for large parts. They lost out, ultimately in overtime, but it was a high-scoring game. There's been numerous high-scoring games, and even we saw Patriots, early on in the season, with their struggles, do a number on that secondary. It's not clicking at the level we saw last year. Injury concerns there. So I think if any team can benefit from that, it's Miami. And it's a tester for Miami. It's a Sunday night game, prime time. The crowd will be up for it in Philadelphia. Can't do a handle it. I'll go Dolphins. I think Dolphins get away from this game with a win.
All right. We've Monday Night Football. Sorry, Colin, have you weighed in on Dolphins Eagles? I've lost my place here.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We're all going Dolphins.
We can move on to. We're all going Miami. We'll move on to Monday night. So and see
which is great news. Great news. If you're an Eagles fan listening to this is good news and bad news. Sorry, Keith Kelleher.
Put the house on Philly.
Commanders. We all went Commanders, so that's good news for the Giants on Sunday.
Right, Monday Night Football is Niners at Vikings. I'll start off here rather than waiting for someone else to pick before I weigh in, which is my usual trick. But this one's another one of those games that you feel is going to be defined by who's fit and who's not, and how much their injuries have taken out of them. The Christian McCaffrey injury picked up last week against the Browns for the 49ers doesn't look as serious as previously thought. Deebo Samuel similarly looks like he'll bounce back, and Trent Williams also, although that looked a nasty enough ankle injury, seems to be okay. How okay all three of them are is the key to the game for me. You still would think probably Williams is arguably the biggest loss of the three of them if he's not at full power, or if he does drop out of the game for whatever reason. But you still would think the Vikings down Jefferson are going to struggle to contain San Francisco, who'll want to bounce back strongly after that Browns game. And for all, that we talked about the fact that Cleveland did a number on them, 49ers still should have won that game. And in a normal circumstance, they would. It's a 41-yard field goal that they'd put themselves in position to kick. You might argue the toss with Shanahan as to whether he reverted to type, as he oddly does for a coach who sends out such explosive offense. He can be quite conservative at times, and it's been a criticism of his over the years that maybe they had the opportunity to go for the touchdown, or maybe they could have advanced the ball a little bit further and turned it into a chip shot. 41 yards, you would argue, for a lot of field goal kickers these days is a chip shot, and Jake Moody would very much want that one back. As we talked about on our Tuesday show, he's been a little bit shaky, but I don't think it's going to come down to a field goal game here. I still think the 49ers would see this as a game which they can handle, and I see them bouncing back against Minnesota. Colin, is it Vikings or 49ers for you?
For me, I mean, this is Homer at the bat, because the 49ers are stacked, and I think we could potentially do an episode in and of itself as to drawing the parallels as to who is Strawberry and who is Canseco and others from this 49ers roster. But the Vikings are fun, and I saw actually this week that the Vikings EPA is far better this year, but obviously the results haven't gone their way, and that's what I was saying. I think this could be a better team with a worse record. Nothing has gone right for them, and they're kind of in this weird space now where they know that Kirk Cousins is likely gone. Justin Jefferson is out. It's probably about trying to find out who are the kind of foundational pieces that you are going to look to build on, because very likely you are drafting in a young QB in there. I think the 49ers should get back to winning ways. The Vikings have been fun on offense, but Brian Flores has them playing like maniacs, like the way they're blitzing, but they don't yet have the type of players that he needs. I think their defense will be improved again next year, but I just don't think they will be able to live with this Niners team. And I think the Niners will have some guys back, and Shanahan will be able to scheme it up. I mean, they lost last week against a Browns defense that have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Brian, as Colin was saying, Flores sent the house after Fields early and often last week. We saw what the pressure getting home against Brock Purdy did to San Francisco's offense last week. At the same time, though, we said the Niners probably should have won that game. The Vikings could easily have lost the game they played against the Bears, which is not a great place to be. Do you see them being able to make a homestand against this 49ers team and correct some of the issues that have held them back offensively, not least the ball security issues?
No. Johnny Giles had that old saying, and you see it every time. We can only judge the game on its merits. Well, if you judge the last weekend on its merits, you take the Bears Vikings game. Like, you're talking about sending the house and getting to Justin Fields. I think the game was 6-all at half time, and it took late in the third quarter before the Vikings. And even with that, the Bears still had opportunities towards the end. I know every game is very different in the NFL from one week to the next, but you can only judge on what you saw last week. And yeah, you've nailed it. Like, we're bigging up the Browns defense for a fantastic performance, but yeah, there was 2 missed field goals in that game. And you talk about the conservative piece at the end. They could have went on and potentially pushed on for another opportunity to make it even more of a gimme on the field goal. It wasn't debated. They lost the game. The Browns get out, but the 49ers, will certainly be ready for this one. And I think, Monday Night Football, I don't think the Vikings crowd strikes me, and I've read it before, they quickly lose interest in games where it's not going well. It doesn't strike me as the kind of place you go in. It's quite daunting. I think if the Niners get up early, the crowd will lose interest. I think this could be one of the easier Monday Night Football games for the Niners. I think they'll rebound, and they'll rebound in a manner which is expecting of a team that we think will be in the championship game come late January.
All right, there you have it. That is it for the Monday night game and indeed for our Week 7 preview. We thank everyone who tuned in on YouTube Live, and we ask anyone who's listening back to us on podcast, will you please rate, review, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference in terms of helping others to find us. And obviously, let's face it, it's a little bit of an ego boost as well. And we could all do with that on a wet Thursday evening with all of our teams languishing at or near the bottom of their respective divisions. Hope springs eternal, though, in the NFL, and we hope for better things this weekend.